I still remember my time in India. I grew up in not a rich home. My mom and dad had 8 children, and I was the 8th, and we didn't have much. And by God's grace, I was able to do my CA and you know, and pass my CA, which is a huge thing in India because very few people get through and become a chartered accountant. And I loved the Lord. I was serving the Lord. I used to preach in the streets of a city called Chennai. It used to be called Madras in India. Loved the Lord. But for a whole year, I did not get a job. Yeah, I grew up in a family in India. I was struggling with finances. Didn't have much. We just about made it. And here I was trying to get a breakthrough in my own life by doing my CA, studied hard, worked hard. And in that context, I came to know Jesus. When I just started my CA in 1977, that's when I came to know Jesus. And here I completed my CA, and I knew that was a miracle. But for a whole year, I did not get a job. And I became weary. I questioned, God, where are you? Don't you care? Don't you understand I'm in this need? And that one year was a huge struggle of becoming weary with the Lord, becoming weary with circumstances, knowing there's a God who does miracles, knowing there's a God who's taking care of people and blessing people. And those who didn't know the Lord, and in India I had many friends who were Hindus and Muslims, and they were doing extremely well after finishing the CA. And here I was a person who loved the Lord, serving the Lord, and I was without a job for a whole year. But looking back, God taught me so many things at that particular point. It wasn't, I could have gone into a place of hopelessness, I could have gone to a place of rejection, I could have gone to a place of even forgetting God. But, and is weariness real? Yes, it is. Is the attacks of the enemy that can come on you when different types of things happen in your life which is not in line with what you thought it would be, weariness comes in. But looking back, God had to break that stronghold of, finance and stronghold of money in my life where He says, I am your source, I am your supplier, I am your Jehovah Jireh. I have a greater plan for you which money is not going to provide for you, but I'm going to be your provider. God had to teach me that huge lesson. So I had to go through that process. Now I know it, but when I was going through that process, like Thomas saying, unless I touch you, I will not believe it. Or even the women, as they were going to the tomb, who is going to roll that stone away? As you and I face circumstances and you're struggling through that, it is real. And I want to encourage you. I mean, and there are many things that God has done in Sheela's life, in my life. Both of us grew up in India. The first 30 years of my life, I was in India. I've seen suffering. I've been part of it. I know what it is to be weary. I know what it is to be hopeless. I know what it is to go through a stage where no one else is there to help you. I remember a time when I love my mother a lot, and she's gone to be with the Lord right now. She went to be with the Lord about 5 years ago. But this is going years back when I was a young Christian. In fact, I was just preached in my youth group, came back home, and she had a huge heart attack. And she was lying in bed. And here I'm crying out to God, Lord, what do I do? And we had called the doctor, and the doctor refused to come, because he was so busy doing certain things, he refused to come. And in India, it's not like calling 911 and you get an ambulance. It doesn't work that way. And here I see my mother, she could be dying. And hopeless circumstances, again, I'm just bringing you real life circumstances where I've gone through and where you can become weary, you can lose hope. And at that point, I remember I just prayed to God and said, Lord, give my mom rest. And immediately I heard her snoring. And within an hour of sleeping, she got up from her bed and started cooking and serving us. She was totally healed. And the doctors came later and checked her up and said, no, you shouldn't be doing that. But, there's a God who answers prayers, and there's a God who intervenes. But I want to tell you, I mean, Sheela must have gone through a lot in different ways. And getting weary is real. Being attacked in life is real. Going through life circumstance is real. And becoming weary is real. So tonight, our hearts goes to those people who could be weary because of sickness, could be because you didn't get a job, because of disappointments in your life. And you come to a place saying, God, are you there? You go through hopeless circumstances. And the Bible is full of many instances where you wonder, God, where are you? Where are you? And you might be in that circumstances tonight. But I have good news for you. I have a real news for you. I have the truth to tell you that Jesus is real. Jesus is real. And some of you, I believe, as you call the prayer lines, you might see instantaneous answers. Some of you, God will open your eyes to recognize. It's like that Emmaus Road. Suddenly they recognize, wow, this was Jesus who was teaching all this time. I didn't recognize Jesus, and they leave the place and go back to Jerusalem. And there are times you will be able to take U-turns in your life and get back to your purposes and plans that God has for you. And sometimes the enemy, through weariness, gets you away from what God's called you to do. And God might have a great call in your life. God has a great destiny. God has great, beautiful things in front of you. But because of weariness, you might be pulling back and saying, what's going to happen to me? But tonight, I'm just sensing that many families, many individuals are going to be turning their lives and getting closer to God.
Amen. I believe that. I believe that. I know that in my own personal life, as a mother of 2 boys, there have been times when, especially a few years ago when, it seemed like everything was overwhelming me. I was a working mom and, and I'm a pastor's wife and, I'm involved in ministry. I'm, teaching full time, and I have boys and the nephew staying with me. And I remember one time, I was like, trying to maintain the order in the house, and there's dishes all over and clothes all over the place, and boys and their basketball and their shoes and their friends and all of it. And I just, over a period of time, had become so weary and of just, trying to, keep praying and believing. And I was believing for some things in prayer, and it seemed like there was a season when nothing was happening. And I remember I was doing dishes by the, I don't know how many of you mothers who are watching there, have cried over dishes, and I was thinking, I've lost, my joy, and but the Lord spoke to me, and from Galatians chapter 6, and it was verse 9 that says, do not become weary in well-doing, because in due season you will reap a harvest. And as God spoke to that, I realized that I had allowed weariness to settle in, and that happened because I was doing things without the focus of not as doing unto the Lord. And so I had to rearrange, my priorities and why am I doing this, and I was doing it, as unto the Lord, and God restored. I had to go back to God for this, even simple things like that. But God restored my joy and my priorities, and and many times I just gave a simple example of as a mother, as a wife, as a working woman, things can happen. But when you go back to the Lord, it says, actually in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3, I believe it is, the writer encourages us. It says, consider Jesus. He was talking about Jesus, and saying, consider him who, who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So, I mean, the scriptures clearly indicate that it's possible for us to grow weary and lose heart and lose hope and give up. But we are encouraged to consider Jesus, and we are encouraged to persevere on and move on, that God is with us and he is able to restore the weary. He wants to bring us into that place of wholeness and restoration and rest and peace, and to give us the ability to do everything that he has called us to do without being weary.